Oh man, almost didn't happen today. Seconds away from not doing this show at all. But we're here now. Thanks for waiting. Some of you guys, not intentional on starting a little bit past our time, but you know what? It is what it is. I make up all the rules. It's arbitrary, right? You know, when you're like running around and just like rushing, then you just get somewhere, you're just like, all right. Anyhow, I hope you guys are doing well out there today. We have some fascinating news. We have another break in the story, and that man is John Cena. Yeah, that reel was great, wasn't it? Gosh, when I saw that reel, I was like pumped up. You're glistening, sweating, running. Don't you guys hate that feeling? Like there's one feeling that I despise, and that's like always that like rushed like pressure, like anxiety, trying to like get somewhere on time, and you're like doing stuff, and all these things are coming up, and you're just like, ugh. You know what I mean? Did you guys listen to the show this morning? I was telling Sevon, I was like, I loved the way he positioned his it's not even like his opinion. That was the funniest part that we were talking about. It wasn't even his like opinion on stuff. It was just like he was just feeding out the facts. It was pretty funny. If you guys haven't gone and watched this morning's show, you should go back and do so. Chase, what's up, man? Get with the programming. Kenneth took my line. CrossFit's fate is in one man's hands. Standy is tired. It's okay. I get it. Good afternoon, Sarah. What's up? Cody, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Pressure makes diamonds. Keep sparkling, girl. Okay. I'll take it. I'll take it. Sometimes pressure just makes for an ulcer too. So you gotta balance it. You know what I mean? I missed the live, but just finished it. Sevi was spot on about boobies. Yeah, that was he may be onto something with the breast augmentation gay theory. Yeah, interesting perspectives. It was a good show. All right, so we're gonna okay, we're talking about the sell of CrossFit. Obviously, you guys probably know that by now. This is what I enjoy talking about. I think it deeply affects affiliate owners and coaches. And I know a lot of people go, well, nobody at my gym cares who owns CrossFit. And it's like, well, they shouldn't. You're the gym owner. You probably protect them a little bit from that. But you, as an affiliate or a coach or somebody who's hoping to get into the CrossFit space full time and build a lifelong career out of it, should care immensely about these things, because it will affect you, whether it does right away or whether it does down the line. The interesting thing about the sale of this company is, obviously, there's been some weird stuff. You guys have watched the shows from before, kind of when we broke the news on here about Hustle Up, Northern Spirit, B Sport, and that cohort of people that were coming in to make a bid or to buy CrossFit or wherever they are in that process. We talked about it on the show. Then shortly after, what was that, like 2 weeks later, something like that, Dawn did a affiliate town hall, read from a script, and basically told us nothing except for they are going to sell CrossFit. Yeah, shocker. Nobody knew that was happening. But they are going to sell CrossFit, and we'll listen to a portion of that again, just a small section, because it's really important in the way that he was positioning why they were putting CrossFit essentially up for bid, quote unquote, or advertising that we were selling it. And that information is going to be important in terms of the potential buyer of CrossFit. First, we'll dive into a little bit, though. There was a couple of comments from the comment section on some older shows that I thought were worth addressing. There wasn't that many. For some reason, I thought there was more. I need to save them when I read them in real time, because sometimes I'll read them and then it sparks like a whole entire thing in my head, and then I just kind of like forget about it. So I'll do a better job of saving them to answer them later. But this one from the Clooney's Adventure: does the CrossFit, or does the community need a CrossFit HQ? I feel like whoever buys CrossFit is going to do things that don't align with the whole community. Everybody loves a bit of drama, and I do mean everyone. So the CrossFit media will continue to over-report on all the small things. Yep. Facts. That don't actually matter at all. That this will take all the air out of the good things that are being done at the affiliate every single day. Yes and no. I mean, so to answer the first part, does CrossFit need a CrossFit HQ? This is something that I've thought about too, and I think I would have been on the side of like no, But at the same time, if you really think about it, you kind of have to have this parent brand, right? Like the almighty that is the entity that is CrossFit in order to keep kind of everything together. I do think that is needed. Now, how big of a role do they need to play? That could be up for debate. But their job should be doing nothing but highlighting the brand and what it does with people. You guys have heard me talk about this in nauseum. And the question is whoever comes in to buy CrossFit, and we talked about this on the Chris Cooper show on Friday. So if you haven't seen that show, you should definitely go listen to this. And Chris was saying, which I happen to agree with, is that when you get the right buyer in that is truly going to be invested into the long term of CrossFit, 10, 20-year run, they're passionate about the space, they want to get involved, and they want to see it grow and succeed, that those incentives, those initiatives are going to end up costing you money in the short term with virtually a loss, almost guaranteed, because you'll have to get in there. You're going to have to prune things back. You're going to have to restructure. And those things don't necessarily mean revenue growth at first. But just like if you use the analogy of like pruning back a tree, so you could get rid of all the, all the overgrown and all the dead stuff, so that way new things can grow in its place. That is for sure what will happen with the company, meaning it might look like it shrinks and it digresses for a short period of time, which is actually just building it stronger for it to have another push of growth in the future. And if you do not have the right buyer that's willing to make those investments, willing to lose that money, so to speak, and in it for the long term, then it could be disastrous in terms of what it'll look like in the next 3 to 4 years for the company. In which case, and you've heard me talk about it on the show, which is like breaking it into parts and potentially cannibalizing it, selling the games here, all this. Standy, Souza learned all this from Business 101. No, I never took a business class. And most people watching this probably like, I know. And I've seen the comments in Reddit too about, I read one book and he thinks he knows everything. Whatever. Whatever. Anyhow, so I do think that there is still a need for a CrossFit HQ at this time, because you do need some sort of parent company that's pushing the brand forward and basically holding everything together. But it has to be focused on growing the ecosystem, not growing revenue. And this is going to become the hard part. Okay, so the next comment on here is about from Brett Riley, 2123. Did you notice that Hustle Up is presenting at the affiliate conference prior to the games? Deal is done, and this will be the reveal / first time for new owners to address the community. That is interesting, isn't it? And it feels like the deal was pretty close to being done. It feels like that the deal was done. Like when I had caught the information that I did, I basically was putting it together and was like, I think this thing is over. Like, I think these people already bought it and this transition is kind of just happening. Now, a couple weeks later, when I almost said Rosa, I always say Dawn and Rosa, it's so weird. As Dawn basically addressed it at large with the community, that was the first time that I was like, okay, this deal probably isn't done and something is happening in the background that we're not aware of. Standy, it's a joke. Thank you. I'll give you one of these. Sarah Cooper, nice shirt. Are you guys streaming Crash this weekend? No, we are not streaming Crash this weekend. But I'm sure it's going to be amazing nonetheless. And yeah, it is a cool shirt. Old school one. Shout out to JR for the shirt. So I don't know. I don't think that the deal is done. I do think that the deal might be close. The other thing that I was asked about, the Hustle Up, the Northern Spirit, the B Sport, like who's this Malik? Like what do we think their intentions are? And I got a few texts from people after I did the original show, and they were like, you were kind of giving it almost like this positive spin, and definitely wasn't a negative look on them. And the reason why is you guys saw the research that I was doing. Most of it was in real time with you here. And they looked like they were CrossFitters. Like all part of it looked like they were invested in the community for the right reasons. Now, of course, we won't really know what's going to happen until they get a hold of the, get behind the driver's seat or get in the driver's seat of CrossFit and start to steer the ship. Then obviously we'll have more to base that off of. But if you look at the original actions of like getting close with like Mayhem, getting involved with the games, making a presence first, and kind of showcasing that support, those to me are all good initial first signs that they're trying to do the right thing for the CrossFit community. CrossFit. Hello, fellow CrossFitters. Reminds me of like the Tim Cook. Good morning, Cupertino. We have something else that Apple just put a new spin on a did not event. Brett, what's up, man? Good afternoon. So what's the update? Okay, that was the comment section. Unless any of you guys have any questions, which we'll address. Hopefully I'll get some, whatchamacallit, the phone line back up. Got to pay that $199 a week to take calls. All right, so corporate speak. Let's take off where Don originally was speaking about the potential of the buyer that they're looking for from, what was this, last week's episode I did. So I'm going to bring this up here. We're going to play it briefly, and here we are.
As we touched on in our email, ideally that's someone with a connection to our community, a true understanding and appreciation.
Okay, so right there, those are the first initial things that he was claiming is kind of what they're looking for, which is the right buyer, somebody who knows our community and is going to be invested in that community. I should have pulled the original one. I had it queued up for my show, and then I was about to talk there. But if you guys remember when we chatted and we had that up there and we were going through that affiliate town hall, it basically was the tail grind or nose grind, nose slide, tail. Trish, tell me you know absolutely nothing about skateboarding without telling me you know absolutely nothing about skateboarding. Google those. Get your vernacular right. And his whole deal was like, hey, look, we want to find the right buyer, and we want to make sure that they're invested in their passion about CrossFit, and they know what CrossFit is, and they know its potential, and they're going to be somebody that's going to usher it to its next phase of growth, which I don't even really know what that means because it's just kind of a blanket statement. Its next phase of growth. But in the same sentence and in the email, they said that they are working with a bank, Moelis and Company, that will be helping out or doing the sale. And you essentially need them to broker the sale. You need a bank, and they go through the escrow, and there's the exchange of money, and there's the due diligence through the accounting to make sure everything the business is claiming is correct and all the numbers are all the same and all that type of stuff. And this is very common. But one of the things that it is not very common is the consideration of how is everybody going to feel about this? And is it truly the right buyer for CrossFit, the community, and the growth? Or is it the right buyer for Berkshire? Now, the difference there is going to be the dollars. And the reason why I was saying that there was the one man's fate, or CrossFit is held in one man's fate. Sorry, I'm distracted here trying to bring this up. Is now we're going to get into our investigative stuff here. Is with this company here. Okay, so this is the Moelis and Company, and I spent some time going through this as I do here. And there was first off, you could go to like transactions, and you could see all of the stuff that, or the businesses that this company has bought and sold, and it's nuts. Like some of the stuff is in the billions. So these guys are major players. I mean, if you look at this, everything's like 300 million and everything else. And they've done stuff with all sorts of brands. Some things people you've probably never heard of, and some people that you've definitely heard of. As I was scouring through this, I saw that they were helped with the sale of like Lululemon. Stuff like that was like $1.2 billion. Look at this. These are just like unsecured and secured debt due in 2025. They basically bought all the debt from this company valued at $4.2 million. This just like blows my mind. Some of these numbers and some of these companies that hold all this debt. Okay, we're digressing quite far from this now. Anyways, these guys fucking know how to make money. And as I was going through this section here, looking at the senior team and trying to figure out, like, okay, which one of these individuals is it? It doesn't matter which person you click on. When you click on it and you read their specialty and like what they've done, you're like, holy shit. I mean, these people are, I mean, damn, they are some heavy hitters in their respective spaces. Like a couple of these people and the degrees they held in terms of like where they studied and then how they turned those into businesses and all this stuff it's nuts. So I mean, it definitely, like in terms of Berkshire working with a bank that is definitely going to make their exit successful. This is for sure who I would go with if I could afford it, right? I mean, 25 years of investment banking, executing M&A capital raising mandates for healthcare companies and financial sponsors. So anyways, here's how I broke this whole entire thing down. I started going through this. I found people that were relatively local. There was very few San Francisco. Obviously, majority of them were all over the world. Here's one in Hong Kong, but you knew it was going to be some place local. And so they have a whole entire sports entertainment betting branch of this, right? That also worked with sports companies and all of this other stuff. And so as you comb through here, and I'll spare you guys the tons and tons of research, Jeremy Burke is leading it. Kevin, how do you know? How do you know? So debt can be anything. It could be debt. Yeah. It can't be a tree, Trish. So I went down this rabbit hole last night. Nice, Jenny. Good. So the Jeremy Burke is one of the people, Kevin, that I have heard as well. But as I started doing what I do and poking around, it was actually this gentleman's name here, Daniel. Is the Z silent? Webben? Is it Webben? And he's the managing director at Moelis & Company, where he advises a broad spectrum of clients in the media, entertainment, sports, and gaming industries. Dan has extensive investment banking and corporate law and has completed a number of high-profile mandates advising clients on mergers, acquisitions, debt, and equity capital raises, and restructuring in recapitalizations. Prior to joining Moelis & Company, Dan held roles at, kind of ironic, that name. Don't you think? Can you guys see it on your end? Isn't it weird? Like, this whole entire thing is a simulation. This world we live in. Dan held roles at, it's almost Lazar, but it's Lazard in UBS Investment Bank, where his career, I don't know, that's just crazy, right? If you have a great CFO and team, you have a better show debt. Yeah. Technically, debt could be a tree. Yeah, technically, you're right. That's funny. Coincidental, not ironic. Okay, yeah. Coincidental. Usually someone from the M&A team, industry. Try to read in two places. The M&A team, industry team, debt capital markets, and financial sponsors coverage. That makes sense. Likely multiple senior team members. Yeah. So there could be a bunch of people that are involved with the sell of this, but this gentleman's name kept kind of circling around here. Now, okay, why does that matter? Why is this important? It's important because if Daniel's incentives are not aligned with what Don has told us Berkshire's goal is, which was to find the right buyer that's going to move CrossFit into its next phase of growth, quote unquote. And so the question then that I would have is if Daniel's incentives are the same as what Dawn has told us. And here's the deal. Spoiler alert, you guys probably know this in the comments. It's not. And I don't fault him for that. Daniel and Jeremy or Marnie, like any of these other people that are involved at higher levels, whether they're one of the managing partners from Berkshire or one of the managing directors from Moelis and Company, it's their incentives are not, like, legally, they are not to do what is best for the CrossFit community over taking more money if they were offered it by a buyer that wasn't as suited for the CrossFit community. And this is the problem with the transparency coming from Berkshire, or their facade of transparency. It's because if I'm going to claim that we are shopping for a buyer that is going to fit these certain qualifications because we know it's going to be the best new stepdad for CrossFit to have. How do you balance that with maximizing the return for Berkshire and for Moelis and Company? Those two things seem completely at odds with each other. If you're like, I have this classic car and I want to see to it that it goes to a good home, and some 20-year-old something that's super into cars, this is his dream car, he's going to take care of it and work on it, and he wants to have like a generational thing in the family for his kids years later, and he's got $100, and you're like, man, I really like that guy, I want to sell him the car. But then somebody else shows up and goes, oh, this is sick, I'll buy it for $300. And maybe this is like a guy that owns whatever, a chop shop, I don't know, just making up this analogy, right? And so you go, one, I'm going to sell the car to somebody who's going to take care of it, treat it like I have for multiple years, or two, do I maximize my return? Now, if you're the individual buyer that own the car and you have emotional connection with it, you might go with the 20-something. If you are the person that's just brokeraging the deal and your job is to get as much money as you possibly can for the car, then the boy that shows up that's like, hey, I'm going to take care of this for life, like, unfortunately, like, that sounds great, but I could get $300 over here and you're only offering me $100 here. And so that's why it I don't know who's advising them over at Berkshire. But in all honesty, you got to just, like, if you're going to do the transparent role, like, be transparent. And then here's what I would say. Look, guys, our job legally, our fiduciary obligation to the investors at Berkshire that put in money to purchase CrossFit, we have to do what's right for them because we're legally bound to, which is simply maximizing their return. We're trying to turn their dime into a dollar. That's the goal. And now we're going to take into consideration some of these other things, but the main lever of action is going to be the money, is going to be the transaction there. And like, it just, like, then at that point, you just would have been like, well, it is what it is, right? Like, that's actual transparency. Now, here's a little wrinkle, and this is where it gets interesting. Okay, so the numbers are going to be simple here, but, and again, this is like speculation on my part. Looking into some of how these deals are constructed, they're done lots of different ways. And I'm not going to pretend that I know how this one's being constructed. But I will say that oftentimes, if the people over at B Sport came money in hand, let's say they were that 20-year-old that wanted to buy the classic car, keep it in for generations, build it better before, love on it, whatever. And they come with $100, that same scenario. And they approach Moelis and Company. And let's say that there's an incentive tied to the individuals that are running the managing partners on the bank side. Okay. So they go to CrossFit and they go, great, we got a buyer. It's $100. CrossFit says, okay, is that the only offer that comes in so far? We go, yep. And it's a strong offer. Like, they're ready to rock. He's got his $100 in hands, wants to buy the car. And then CrossFit goes, okay, great. Well, you get a return from that in helping with this deal. We're going to give you whatever, like, the real estate is, 3%, 5%. Just pretend it's like selling a house, right? So they get 3 or 5% of the sale. Now, what happens if Moelis and Company or CrossFit says, okay, well, this is only one offer, right? Yeah, it's only one offer, but it's a strong offer and they're ready to rock. Okay, well, before we sign on the dotted line, Let's see if there are any other offers. CrossFit goes, okay, that makes sense to us. Like, let's shop it around. Let's try to maximize it. And then on top of that, let's say that the banker then now gets incentivized with a higher percentage of return for them personally for every dollar that comes in over $100. So meaning if somebody shows up then with a $300 offer to buy the car that it's just going to go to a chop shop and they're going to chop the whole thing up and part it out, sell it all for parts. That my first initial $100, I get my 5 or 3%. And then the $200 that I accrued after that, let's say it's bigger. Let's say it's 25%. Let's say it's 30%. So now let me ask you, go back to Berkshire and what they're saying is like we want to find the right buyer and we want to make sure it's somebody that's going to take care of CrossFit. But if you have that buyer, if we had that $100, the guy that wants to buy the car, and it aligned with the potential loving of CrossFit, knowing it inside and out, knowing its potential, knowing its capability, wanting to invest in the affiliates and do all the, the quote unquote right things to get it back on track. How in the world do any of those things align even remotely? I just don't think they do. And it's kind of crazy to think about when you talk about selling this company and all the lives that it affects. Like, I obviously, like, I'm into like capitalism and entrepreneurship, and like I love the whole business side of it. I love learning about all that and continue to do so. And one of the things that I thought was absolutely fascinating with CrossFit is that you could go and get your L1. You could save up your pennies or do what I did and get your tax return when I used to get tax returns. Now I just pay bills. But when I used to get a tax return and I took that tax return, I folded it right over and I was like, I'm going to go my L1. It's not going to hit my bank account. It's just going to pass right through and go to CrossFit. Because I really, really wanted to invest in my knowledge of coaching, and I was obsessed with it. And then I go ahead and I get that L1. And let's say I start coaching people at the affiliate I go to, or let's say I just start even like reaching out to some neighbors and friends and coaching them at the garage. Well, that's awesome. Then I fall in love with it. Maybe I start to build that clientele. Maybe I start to really add some value in the gym that I'm working for. And all of a sudden, these opportunities really start to open up. And there's not a ton of gatekeeping behind that, because ultimately you could get a ton of your knowledge and probably start interning somewhere before you even have your L1. And if you were real crafty about it, you could go intern, maybe do a little things at the gym, maybe talk to that affiliate owner and they would invest in that L1 for you. And then you come back and start learning how to coach at a higher level and running classes. And I really like things that have this path that allows you to build based just off of the work, your ability to strategize and continue to educate yourself in the space. And I think that if it goes down the road of continued private equity, you're just starting to see that going further and further and further away. And it starts to become almost like all these other industries and different things that there's no way for you to even break into the space without having either money behind you or some of these other things. Like back in the day, like probably like 2014, 2013, you could think, oh, I'm going to get my L1, I'm going to start training. And you could build a business behind that, which is nothing more than the cost of the L1. And then slowly all the stuff that you start to, build up over time. Now I think, and we talked about this on the show with Chris Cooper, it was like almost 200 grand to open an affiliate. I put in my portion with a $25,000 personal loan that I took out from a credit union and was able to start going. And I don't like the fact that that opportunity would be taken away just because it got into the hands of another private equity group that is most likely going to see restructuring and cannibalizing CrossFit. Andrew Hiller. Souza, you are saying Don is a liar. I believe that is the picture that is painted. And I don't like saying that like, Don, you're a liar, because like, whatever, maybe he doesn't lie about stuff in his personal life. And I've had conversations with him outside of this. And so you always kind of brush up against like the personal side versus like the business side. But going to the business side of stuff, yes. And this isn't the first time that we've been blatantly lied to by Berkshire. I mean, They started the whole thing on a lie with saying Eric Roza was in charge. Like, do you guys remember? We should pull up that old fucking thing and say, when Rosa was on there and he's like, I'm gonna own this thing for the next 50 years. Blah 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 blah. And he wasn't even an owner. It was like he got removed. It apparently had a very small percentage of that ownership. And they've been struggling with this. And I think part of the reason is like CrossFitters don't want to be bullshitted. Like, we know that if you show up and you fucking do the wall walk right and you get your time, you do it wrong, your score gets voided. Someone like Andrew Hiller shows up and says, no, dude, you've lied to us and you lied to yourself because all those reps weren't correct. And you'd have better people around you so you could do it right. Like, typically as CrossFitters, and even Greg's line was like, let's start with the truth. So that's one of the most frustrating things about the PR or about the private equity, is that it just constantly feels like we're just being bullshitted all the time. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely would have been like, if Don came out and expressed everything that I did, like, let's assume that everything I'd said about like the banking and the incentives and all that, like, let's say that there is truth to that. Just play along with me. Now, maybe I got it right. Maybe I got 100% of it right. Now, what would be the problem if Don just came out and said that? Do you think that that would cause more chaos? Do you think that shitheads like me wouldn't go start digging around and find things out? It's kind of like an insulting. It's not kind of. It's basically like insulting our intelligence a little bit. It's like, come on, just come clean, dude. Like, and you could even just blame it on a fiduciary obligation. Legally, I have to maximize our return for our investors. It is what it is, guys. We're going to do our best to make sure that we find the right buyer, but you have to know that we have a legal obligation to our investors to maximize our return. And if we don't, and they know that we don't, they will sue us. And then at least like be like, oh shit, okay. It is what it is. I mean, once CrossFit came out of the hands of Greg, a single owner, and most people like would say too, like, Greg wouldn't give a fuck about the money. Like, he just would have kept going with the company, whatever. Like, that was the last thing on his mind. And in fact, I know this in not only personal conversations I've had with him over the last year, but also just by look, like, from the outside looking in. If you approach Greg with some sort of product and be like, and we can attach this to CrossFit, we're all going to make a bunch of money, he would boot you right out the door. Like, he wasn't interested in that. And once it got in the hands of corporate America, and I and Andrew and I have had conversations about this too, and it was so funny hearing him say that like the affiliate was like the microcosm of like everything in the United States and stuff like that. Like, when he said that, it was funny because I had thought that for a long time, and I was like, holy shit, somebody else thinks that. That's incredible. That's exactly the way that I kind of view it, because like you could see these elements of like things that are happening in the US and macro politics at large and stuff. And you could kind of like distill that down to like inside the affiliate and how this CrossFit ecosystem works. And there's so many different parallels and connections. And here's the other thing. Don Fall is a liar. That's Souza. Oh shit. Doesn't that, you know, it's, you guys could tell I'm just such a pussy because that just makes me feel bad reading it out loud too. It is what it is. But yeah, I guess if he was able to tell the truth, it wouldn't look like this. Thank you, everybody, for gathering here today as we discuss the potential sell of CrossFit, and our motivations are aligned with the CrossFit community in the support. It's like you're just looking off to the side and reading the script. Like, come on. I hate Sean Johnson. Who's Sean Johnson? I don't know who Sean Johnson is. Are you saying B Sport is getting boned by Sean Johnson? Maybe. Are they coming in with more money? Do they have money? Was that the gymnast? Souza, the real fear dread. Souza, the real fear is new owners will not embrace the methodology like you. Imagine an owner who only cares about money and who's not about the health CrossFit brings to the world. Yeah, I mean, that would ultimately be like, that is the fear. Yeah, you nailed it. That's it. And people that don't understand what CrossFit is and stuff, they might see that, oh, this is like a quick buck and there's a lot of potential here. And if we just do X, Y, and Z, we could maximize this and we could have a 30% return in this amount of time. And I think a lot of the people that think that don't know really what they're getting into or what exactly CrossFit even is to begin with. And I hate the fact that we I hate the fact that that's kind of where it's come down, because it is all about money. It is being pushed more and more into the corporate kind of greed section than anything else. I hate Sean Johnson. I don't think so. Dread, that is already happening. Yeah, Trish, you're right on that too. Sean could bone. Okay. You already have that. Yeah, we do already have that. And I think that there's the hope of all of that. And like Trish had said that too, is, and maybe it's just being naive, right? Like I say this all the time, like, oh, one more year, things might turn around and like, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, then it kind of doesn't, but then you're kind of still like stuck with the brand because, I've invested so much time and like energy into the space and I love it. And so like, you don't just want to try to turn on it. I get it. There's a lot of stuff. How would you feel if the next owner was Endeavor Group, TKO Holdings? I would feel this very similar with that as I would with kind of like that. To me is very similar to the B Sport situation, where if you have people that know how to work, know how to build something like the UFC and grow a sport like that and have that knowledge base and that team around them, that there could be a lot of value that is added to the CrossFit space. And so again, it just more or less, it just comes down with like, what is the actual incentives of the buyer and what does their timeline look like? I mean, really, that's all that matters, because if you have a long timeline and their involvement is to really get back to the base of what CrossFit is and figure out how to get it all back on track, then I would be okay with any buyer. Except for we know that if it gets in the hands of private equity, that's just not going to be the case. It's just not what they do. It's like trying to stick something in a freezer and being like, I hope it doesn't freeze. It's what the freezer does. It's going to freeze the thing. So that's kind of the hard place that we're at. Now, if you guys don't know about this, Andrew Hiller and I are starting a collective where if you give us all your money, I'm just kidding. I just knew that. Oh, Endeavor went private yesterday. They likely have a longer timeline out of the public eye. Yeah. Yeah. Man with a crooked bookshelf dismantles corrupt sale of CrossFit. Oh, shit. It's hella crooked. That camera setting. That camera setting. Oh, my goodness. What are you sticking where? I don't know. It would be pretty crazy if all those books just fell off and it was actually the shelf and not just the camera. They might do something crazy like require box owners to get an L2 and raise the affiliate fee. Yeah, again, right? If that's not squeezing every penny out of everybody. Can we start a GoFundMe to buy CrossFit? We can. And then let's just put it in my name, and then I'll pull a Black Lives Matter and be like, hey guys, we didn't get enough to buy CrossFit, but if you guys want to see my new house tour of my mansion, it's fucking sick. Has nothing to do with the GoFundMe. I got this money all on my own. Yeah, that's the issue with that and those type of ideas is like you have to think you had to plan that all the way through. And so like how in the world are you going to have a governing body and a board and then you have so many more like shit like that is just sorry, it's a good pipe dream. I just don't think there's any I just don't think there's much validity there. Mike Sedona, dude, I already knew you were jacked, but that picture makes you look extra jacked. I think that we need to face the fact that the Black Square people killed CrossFit when they forced Greg to sell. It's just been a long, slow death. CrossFit as it was with Greg is gone forever. Mike, I really want to disagree with you. But I'm overly committed to optimism. You got to know that. So like I'll just disregard that comment, but unfortunately, you're probably more correct than I want to admit. Can CEO Savan buy CrossFit? We could try. We put in a bid, but yeah, we're a couple $100 million short. Anyone get the L1 30% off for completing the open? That's cool that they did that. All right, I want to show you guys this one last thing that had to do with the sell of CrossFit, because I like to find things that are outside of us, the CrossFit space here, that are also talking about this same thing. Now, this guy wrote, I think, a more detailed article in Substack, and by the time I was able to like pull it all together and get that thing set up, I had to buy Substack for like $12 to like read the article, and it just got crazy. So I ditched it and I found him on Instagram, and he gave like a small like synopsis of what he thought. Souza, would you spin the games off from HQ? No, I wouldn't spin the games off from HQ, but I would dramatically probably restructure everything. And again, like, it would just be interesting to spend some time if like, let's say I did buy CrossFit, it would just be interesting to spend some time like combing through all the books and like the numbers and like really getting a better understanding of like what does that financial picture look like, especially around the games. Those two things would be very insightful, I do believe. Okay, so we'll listen to this guy here, and then we're just about done with this update. A lot of this is going to be stuff you guys already know, but bear with it because it's an outside source.
Let's talk about the business behind CrossFit, because this used to be the blueprint for building a cult-like following, but now it's up for sale for the second time in 5 years. So CrossFit was founded by former gymnast and personal trainer Greg Glassman in the 1990s, and the functional, high-intensity workouts exploded in popularity during the early 2000s. At its peak in the 2010s, CrossFit had 425,000 people competing in the CrossFit Open. The CrossFit Games were sold out every year and broadcast on ESPN, and CrossFit had a $100 million sponsorship deal with Reebok. CrossFit also did a great job with its marketing, turning people like Matt Frazier and Rich Froning into legitimate celebrities. And the business behind CrossFit was pretty good too. CrossFit was making money in 3 primary ways. The first is affiliates. They had 14,000 gyms all over the world paying them a few $1,000s a year to use the CrossFit name. The second was certification courses. These trainers at these gyms were paying them $1,000 or $2,000 a year to attend seminars to learn how to do the functional training and receive their certification. And the third was through things like the CrossFit Games and other sponsorships like that. And when you add all these things up, by 2020, the CrossFit business was doing more than $100 million in annual revenue and making $15 million in profit each year. But then CrossFit CEO Greg Glassman made some controversial comments about George Floyd and was accused of sexual harassment. So he sold the business in 2020 for $200 million to a group that was primarily backed with private equity money. CrossFit's business actually stabilized after the 2020 acquisition. The brand's messaging wasn't great, but they still had 12,000 affiliates all over the world. And the private equity firm was able to increase margins by raising the annual affiliate fees from $3,000 per gym to $4,500. But then everything went south last year when an athlete died during the CrossFit Games due to a drowning incident. The company's messaging after the fact didn't help soften the public backlash, and it led to an exodus of affiliates. More than 1,200 CrossFit gyms have canceled their affiliation since the incident, and now CrossFit is up for sale for the second time in 5 years. Let's talk about...
Kind of interesting, right? It's like almost everything's there, but there's quite a few things missing. The other thing that's interesting is like, if you think about training and affiliateship, the cost for affiliateship, I would imagine, is relatively low, meaning the expenses within that department. Now, if you go over to training, the expenses get higher because you're flying trainers around, you're putting them up in hotels, you're probably giving them some sort of money for food. So there's a little bit more of a cost that comes with that. Now, if they also had a $100 million contract over the course of whatever it was with Reebok, 10 years or something like that, and you add that money up, in his example, he said it was taking in about $100 million like top line and about $15 million profit. It's kind of interesting that a company of that size, when you figure one or if not two of its main revenue streams, the affiliateship should have a relatively low expense to it. And then the games has that sponsorship. So you would imagine that that is subsidized somewhat by the $1 million or so that Reebok was putting in. Now, assuming that the costs for the trainings weren't like crazy, that they were manageable, and that each training seminar was a profitable entity, meaning like if they had 12 people that signed up and they ran the course, we knew that that course made money. So if you take all of those things into consideration, you would have to think that CrossFit should be bringing in a more sizable profit than a 15% margin. I don't know. So then you have to ask yourself is like, so then what's just hemorrhaging the cash? And if you go back, because I think those numbers he was referencing was when the Reebok time was, that was when it was like Greg said, oh, it cost me $1 million to send someone from South America to the games. Meaning it was costing way more money to put those things on than it was worth the juice was worth the squeeze. And so there has to be some sort of reframing and restructuring of the whole entire sports side. Now we know that Berkshire did that in some capacity over the years. Like we saw the missing banners. They started, like Don admittedly said, they're taking a significant amount of money out of sport. And the interesting thing too is I didn't really think that much happened this year in terms of the media around the Open. And I do think that if you're going to invest in the games, investing around the Open is where you would put most of your money, that media behind it, that big community event. So that really makes sense to me. But over the last year, I don't really know if we saw any of that money reinvested back into affiliates or training or anything like that, assuming that they were able to reallocate some money from sport to training and affiliateship. So it's kind of, again, it feels just kind of like we were lied to, as in like, hey, we're going to pull more money out of sport and like heavily invest into affiliates. And maybe they did do that to a certain extent, or maybe they just kept a lot of that money back so they could increase that profit margin from sport. So that way, as you look at the accounting of it, it looks potentially more viable than it is. Because $100 million top line with not crazy expenses with only a $15 million profit, assuming those numbers are somewhat correct, seems pretty insignificant for a company that size. Was a loss leader worth it? It would all depend on the give me some EBITDA. It would all depend on the how they're measuring that. And that's the other thing too. Like you can't necessarily claim as a matter of fact that X, Y, and Z was a huge marketing tool unless you have some sort of data to back that. And that's another thing that we talked a little bit about on Friday's show, and we've heard, I've talked about before here, which is like the data is king. So like if you could get some of that data. Now we have qualitative data because a lot of you guys have all said, hey, I watched the documentary or I did this, and that brought me to CrossFit. And then I could argue that you could probably make some of those void of having it focused around a really expensive competition, and you might get the same outcome. So Dave is a huge investment in the affiliates. I completely agree that like without Dave, I mean, he's still doing the affiliate interviews. I think I just saw one the other day pop up. He's one of the only executives that we see all the time that would visit affiliates and showcase that, like, taking pictures or posting on his stories all the times. And Dave, was involved with training very closely through his bringing up of CrossFit in terms of his growth in the company, his personal growth in the company. So he really, really understands the importance of the affiliates and the importance of the methodology. The problem is like you guys could see it from the outside in, and I don't know this for a fact. I'm just assuming that it really seems like he's caught with a lot of resistance in everything he's trying to do as well. And I know his job cannot be easy internally, trying to do everything he's doing, that in some cases maybe isn't necessarily agreed upon by other executives. Again, I don't know that, but it kind of seems like that from the outside looking in. So to recap the whole entire thing, Moles and company, Daniel, Jeremy, the rest of the senior team, Marnie at Berkshire, and Dawn, the PR people that have, any say in the scripts that are being done. Here's my advice. When you guys go through this, fucking rip the Band-Aid off and be honest. Like, just be honest. There was a Standy, I'm going to reference a book and you're going to call me a nerd, but there's a book called like The Hard Things About the Hard Things, or Doing the Hard Things or something. And it talks about, and there's like a company, a startup that had to do this mass layoff of people. And the guy basically said the only way that he did it, that the company was able to survive, is he brought the whole entire company into a room and was like, unfortunately, all of you guys are gone. The people that are staying, you guys have your jobs still. Here's some numbers. Here's why we made this decision. I'm incredibly sorry, and I failed you as a leader, but it is what it is. And then at that point, you're just like, okay. I mean, how could you refute that? And if anything, you respect the honesty. So don't claim transparency if you don't really want to do it. Or go the opposite direction and just be like, hey guys, we do all of this privately. I know that the CrossFit community is different than most communities, as you guys are very outspoken and there's a lot of independent media that goes into these things. But I'm just to be honest, we're just not going to tell you anything until it's done. And then at least you don't have to try to go over back and look like a fool again, saying that you're going to be transparent about this and that and this and that, and then you're not, and then you kind of are telling these half truths, and then it gets exposed that it wasn't true at all. It's just like, dude, you might as well just be done. For point of reference, $100 million revenue is a 15% margin. Yeah. TKO Holdings revenue was 2.8 billion, adjusted for EBITDA was 1.3, almost 50% margin. Damn. Capitalism is going to capitalism. Yeah, it is. It is. I bet Moelis offices smell like window cleaner and soil from indoor plants. That's a great note to end on, Trish. So, all right. I hope I shed some light on kind of some of the things that are actually happening with the sell of CrossFit. Obviously, this is all opinion and speculation. You guys should all do research for yourself. And with a hint of cologne, Kevin, yes. And at this point, there's not much we could do. It does seem like B Sport could be the potential correct buyer for this. Again, we never know until this individual gets into the driver's seat of the company. But until then, hey, we got each other, right, guys? It's up to us. So get in there and train your ass off and keep doing your thing, and we shall see what happens. Stop yelling at us. I will not cross fat. I will not. Mr. Beast. I don't know what that is. Who's this? Digger. Greg got to cash in at least. That's true. That was an interesting statement that was made by Chris Cooper too, when he was saying, hey, look, if I was using, like Greg said to him, hey, look, if I was using somebody's methodology, I'd want to pay him for it. And then Chris was like, well, Greg got paid for it. There was 200 million. So now who are we paying? I like that. That really put it in perspective there. So, alrighty, guys. My whole thing is to hope to give you guys as much information as I can, whether it's opinion, speculation, whether I'm correct, whether I'm not correct. At least you have something to mull over, and at least you're kind of have some more light shed on some of the things that are happening. So if you're a coach or you're an affiliate owner, like, keep doing what you guys do, because as I said in the last show, the most important thing is when you guys roll up those bay doors and you guys start your classes. That is CrossFit. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry I pushed the show back around like a madman. Love y'all. What do we have tomorrow? Greg coming on tomorrow? Should be interesting. Greg coming on in the morning? That guy missed twice. Not his fault. Whatever. All right. But man, you had 2 no-shows after you confirmed. Come on, dog. I'm not talking about Greg. I was talking about this morning's guest. Okay. Claire. Hi. Thank you. Have a great day. Barkley, what do you say? Maybe if we say please and the P will not go for the biggest buyer. That is a good point. That's a good point. Who knows showed? The same guy. He's been in communication with us both times. And in his defense, I don't know if he fully knows that it's like Ready to Rock live. Maybe he didn't fully get that. But yeah, he's been communicative. So it is what it is. This show is almost as big as Boys Interrupted. And it's just me talking into the void. I think I've told you guys this, but I've really tried to force myself to like do this format because it's really freaking hard. Like you just get on here and you just have to start going, and it is tough. But oh, next week, you guys want to see something? So I'm bringing on. Sorry, I know I said I was going to go, but I want to show you this real quick before. I'm bringing on this guy, and this is going to be next week is going to be my first time bringing a guest on that I don't know, because you guys know that I've brought guests on, but it's mostly just like my homies. So this dude, how is it? Hold on, give me a sec. This guy, boom. Kylo, this dude flew from Norway when he was young to essentially go and work for Patrick Bet David, and he helped him build up Valuetainment. He was a producer for him. And then he left that and made this opportunity where he created his own company with like these quiz funnels. But I've followed with him. Him and I have like DM'd back and forth in the past and stuff. And like, I just love the fact that this dude took this like massive risk, had zero like knowing if it was going to work out or anything at all, went in, was able to contribute at a really high level, and work himself into a position to gain all those skills, all that networking, and then take that and then like build it into this business that he has in Texas now. So we'll learn a little bit about his journey, and we're going to learn a little bit about what he's up to now, and how what the strategy was behind all of that. So might not be something you guys are super into, but I don't know. I found it interesting, and I think that we'll learn a lot. So, all right, peace out, y'all. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.